Have you ever looked in the mirror after 40 and wondered why your belly seems to grow no matter how carefully you count calories? You reduce portions, skip desserts, walk more, even try the diet that worked 10 years ago, yet the stubborn fat around your midsection refuses to leave. It feels unfair, almost like your body has turned against you. But what if the real reason has nothing to do with willpower? What if the truth is deeper, more biological, and far more empowering than you have been led to believe? Why belly fat? After 40 is more about inflammation than calories is not just a catchy phrase. It is a shift in perspective that can completely transform how you approach your health and your future. For decades, we have been told that fat gain is simple math, calories in versus calories out. Eat less, move more, and the weight will disappear. That equation sounds logical, clean, and controllable. Yet after 40, the body no longer plays by the same rules. Hormones begin to shift, stress accumulates, sleep patterns change, and beneath the surface, something quiet but powerful starts to rise: chronic low-grade inflammation. This type of inflammation is not the dramatic swelling you see after an injury. It is subtle, persistent, and often invisible. It hums in the background of your physiology, influencing how your body stores energy, how it responds to carbohydrates, and where it chooses to deposit fat. And increasingly, it chooses the abdomen. The belly becomes a storage site not simply because of excess calories, but because the internal environment signals the body to protect, to store, to prepare for perceived stress. Visceral fat, the deep fat wrapped around your organs, is not passive. It is metabolically active. It behaves almost like an endocrine organ, releasing chemical messengers that communicate with the rest of your system. When inflammation rises, visceral fat expands. And when visceral fat expands, it releases more inflammatory compounds. A cycle begins. This cycle disrupts insulin sensitivity, making it harder for your cells to use glucose effectively. Blood sugar levels fluctuate more dramatically. The pancreas works harder. Cravings intensify. Energy crashes become more frequent. You may blame your discipline, but the truth is your metabolism is responding to signals far beyond your daily calorie count. After 40, estrogen and testosterone levels naturally shift. Cortisol, the stress hormone, may remain chronically elevated due to modern pressures. Insulin becomes less efficient. These hormonal changes subtly alter how nutrients are partitioned. The same meal you tolerated easily at 30 may now lead to greater fat storage at 45. It is not because you are weaker, it is because your internal chemistry has changed. And when inflammation is layered on top of hormonal shifts, the body becomes primed to store abdominal fat as a survival strategy. This realization can feel unsettling at first. If it is not just about eating less, then what is within your control? Here's where the story becomes hopeful. When you understand that belly fat after 40 is more about inflammation than calories, you stop fighting your body and start working with it. Instead of obsessing over restriction, you begin asking deeper questions. How well am I sleeping? How stable is my blood sugar? How high are my stress levels? Am I building or losing muscle? These questions move you from surface solutions to root causes. The goal is no longer punishment, it is restoration. Your body is not broken. It is responding intelligently to the signals it receives. Change the signals, and you change the response. That is where transformation truly begins. There is a moment in every transformation when frustration reaches its peak, when you have tried the diets, the detoxes, the extra cardio sessions, and still the mirror refuses to cooperate. That moment can either break you or awaken you. Because beneath that stubborn belly fat lies a deeper story, one that most people never take the time to understand. The suspense is not in whether you can lose the weight, it is in whether you are willing to look beyond the obvious explanation. Most people remain trapped in the calorie narrative, fighting harder each year as their bodies respond less. They double down on restriction. They push through exhaustion. They blame aging as an irreversible decline. But what if the very strategies you are using are quietly feeding the cycle you are trying to escape? Chronic dieting increases stress. Elevated stress raises cortisol. Persistent cortisol encourages abdominal fat storage. At the same time, insufficient recovery elevates inflammatory markers, making insulin resistance more pronounced. The body becomes locked in a loop, storing more while you are attempting to lose more. That is the paradox of midlife metabolism. It is not laziness. It is not lack of discipline. It is biology responding to signals of stress and instability. Imagine inflammation as a dimmer switch rather than an on-off button. After 40, that switch is often turned slightly higher due to accumulated stress, environmental exposures, sleep debt, and hormonal shifts. You may not feel acutely sick, yet internally the immune system remains mildly activated. This low-grade activation alters how fat cells behave. Visceral fat cells, in particular, release cytokines and inflammatory compounds that communicate with the liver and muscles, influencing how nutrients are handled. When these signals persist, the body becomes less efficient at burning stored fat and more inclined to protect it. And here is where the tension builds. If visceral fat produces inflammatory chemicals, and those chemicals promote further fat storage, then the cycle becomes self-reinforcing. Fat feeds inflammation, and inflammation feeds fat. Breaking this cycle requires more than willpower. It requires strategy. It requires understanding that sleep is not optional maintenance, but a metabolic regulator. During deep sleep, cortisol declines and growth hormone supports tissue repair. When sleep is fragmented, insulin sensitivity worsens the next day. Cravings intensify, decision-making weakens. One poor night may not matter, but months or years of compromised sleep shift the entire metabolic baseline. Stress management operates the same way. You cannot eliminate stress entirely, but you can influence how your body processes it. Breathing practices, quiet reflection, time outdoors, and strength training all signal safety to the nervous system. When the nervous system feels safe, cortisol patterns normalize. When cortisol normalizes, abdominal fat storage becomes less urgent. Nutrition also transforms from a battle of subtraction to a practice of stabilization. Instead of asking how little you can eat, ask how consistently you can support blood sugar balance. Balanced meals with adequate protein, fiber, and healthy fats reduce dramatic glucose spikes. Fewer spikes mean fewer insulin surges. Fewer surges reduce the signal to store fat centrally. Muscle preservation becomes another critical piece of the puzzle. After 40, muscle loss accelerates if it is not intentionally challenged. Resistance training stimulates muscle protein synthesis, improves glucose uptake, and lowers inflammatory markers. Muscle is metabolically protective. It acts as a reservoir for glucose, reducing the burden on fat storage pathways. Without it, the body becomes more vulnerable to insulin resistance. The suspense begins to resolve when you realize that your body is not fighting you. It is responding to cumulative signals. Change the signals consistently, and the response shifts. The question is no longer why the belly fat appeared, but whether you are ready to address the deeper mechanisms sustaining it. And when inflammation is layered on top of hormonal shifts, the body becomes primed to store abdominal fat as a survival strategy. This realization can feel unsettling at first. If it is not just about eating less, then what is within your control? Here's where the story becomes hopeful. When you understand that belly fat after 40 is more about inflammation than calories, you stop fighting your body and start working with it. Instead of obsessing over restriction, you begin asking deeper questions. How well am I sleeping? How stable is my blood sugar? How high are my stress levels? Am I building or losing muscle? These questions move you from surface solutions to root causes. The goal is no longer punishment. It is restoration. Your body is not broken. It is responding intelligently to the signals it receives. Change the signals, and you change the response. That is where transformation truly begins. The final shift happens when you stop chasing quick fixes and start building a physiology that no longer needs to cling to excess abdominal fat. This is where patience becomes power. You begin to understand that healing inflammation, restoring hormonal balance, and improving insulin sensitivity are not overnight events. They are cumulative victories earned through consistent action. Each night of quality sleep lowers the inflammatory tone just a little. Each balanced meal stabilizes blood sugar just a little more. Each strength training session preserves muscle and strengthens metabolic flexibility. Over weeks and months, those small adjustments compound into visible change. The mirror eventually reflects what your internal chemistry has already begun to transform. The belly softens not because you starved it away, but because the body no longer feels threatened. Cortisol rhythms become steadier. Insulin responds more efficiently. Muscles absorb glucose with greater ease. The inflammatory signals quiet down, and when inflammation decreases, the body becomes more willing to release stored energy. This is the deeper truth behind sustainable fat loss after 40. It is not about punishing the body into submission. It is about creating conditions in which it feels safe enough to let go. Hormones, once viewed as obstacles, become allies when supported properly. Estrogen balance in women influences how fat is distributed and how insulin behaves. Testosterone support in men and women helps preserve lean mass and metabolic drive. Managing stress protects these hormonal systems from unnecessary disruption. You begin to see how interconnected everything is. Sleep affects cortisol. Cortisol affects insulin. Insulin affects fat storage. Fat tissue affects inflammation. Inflammation affects hormones. It is a web, not a single thread. And when you address the web strategically, progress becomes more stable. The phrase "why belly fat" after 40 is more about inflammation than calories stops being an abstract concept and becomes a guiding principle. Calories still matter, but they are no longer the sole focus. Quality, timing, and metabolic context take precedence over sheer restriction. You shift from extreme dieting to intelligent fueling. You prioritize protein to preserve muscle. You choose fiber-rich carbohydrates that digest more slowly. You incorporate healthy fats that support hormone production. You hydrate adequately. You reduce ultra-processed foods that amplify inflammatory pathways. You train with resistance to maintain strength. You walk to support circulation and recovery. You protect your sleep as if it were medicine because in many ways it is. Most importantly, you cultivate consistency rather than intensity. Intensity can spark change, but consistency sustains it. There will be weeks when the scale barely moves. There will be days when cravings resurface. There will be moments when old habits tempt you back into quick-fix thinking. Yet, if you stay committed to addressing inflammation, stabilizing hormones, and strengthening your metabolic foundation, the trajectory continues upward. Over time, energy improves, mental clarity sharpens, blood sugar stabilizes, waist circumference gradually decreases. The transformation extends beyond appearance. It becomes a renewal of vitality. After 40, the body is not declining by default. It is adapting to the signals it receives. When you change those signals deliberately, aging becomes a period of refinement rather than deterioration. You are not condemned to carry stubborn belly fat forever. You are invited to understand your biology more deeply than ever before. And when you accept that invitation, you step into a more empowered chapter of health. If you are benefiting from our topics, please subscribe, like, and turn on the bell notification so you can see our new videos early. And when inflammation is layered on top of hormonal shifts, the body becomes primed to store abdominal fat as a survival strategy. This realization can feel unsettling at first. If it is not just about eating less, then what is within your control? Here's where the story becomes hopeful. When you understand that belly fat after 40 is more about inflammation than calories, you stop fighting your body and start working with it. Instead of obsessing over restriction, you begin asking deeper questions. How well am I sleeping? How stable is my blood sugar? How high are my stress levels? Am I building or losing muscle? These questions move you from surface solutions to root causes. The goal is no longer punishment, it is restoration. Your body is not broken. It is responding intelligently to the signals it receives. Change the signals, and you change the response. That is where transformation truly begins.